Hello there. I'm still in Leith Hill. I went to Leith Hill, which is a place I've been a number of times now, because I wanted to paint these trees. And as an urban sketcher, painting any kind of landscape is difficult for me because, it's one of those things where you just don't know quite where to start with landscape, with distance, with foliage and kind of all the roundy shapes. But trees, of course, have a structure to them. So I thought I'd go and paint some trees, and I've already completed one. Having completed this, which took me, something within 2 hours, I kind of felt as if I carried on going, I could do something else. So I've literally turned around 180 degrees to face the other way, which for me is a harder subject because there's no horizon line. There are just a big bunch of trees and these kind of tall trees overhead, Scots pines I think they are. And I was kind of thinking, let's roll on, let's see if you can now do that, but let's do it slightly differently. Let's give it a different take. And in the first painting I was super reliant on the blue of the paper, and in the second painting I'm going to try and not do that. Basically do it in a different way, but do it immediately after the first one. I've imagined where the painting's going to sit on the page, using a brush to kind of ghost in my imagination, really, where the trunks of the trees are and where the foliage is and the kind of the crown of the tree, I think it's called, isn't it? The kind of shadowing. And then I've gone straight in with some acrylic paint. This is a new acrylic paint to me. It's Pabio Origin acrylic, which is supposed to be made more sustainably somehow. I think it has recycled binders and things in it, so theoretically better. I bought it because it came in a charming little tube, and there was a deal on in the shop where I could buy 3 for the price of 2. Who doesn't like that? Anyway, I've done this obviously differently from the previous painting in that I've just directly applied a whole squadron of paint straight onto this blue card, specifically to kind of break that the more sort of careful delicacy of the first painting where I used a brush to kind of draw where the trees were, and making sure to apply the colour with the most amount of textural variation and kind of uncertainty, if that makes sense. So sometimes the paint is scraped to the point of it's almost not there, almost so transparent. Other places it's really thick. So there's a real sense of texture already on the page. So this is quite high stakes starting because, it kind of could look awful in your mind. You have to believe in it. You have to believe that, of course, this is just the underneath. Bits of this will poke through in the final piece. What it's really there for is to give you an energetic beginning, so you feel as if you've already got like a big bang on the page and you're just beginning to tame that bang, if that makes sense. So there's a fun to it, there's an energy to it. And specifically because I'd done quite a controlled painting in my eyes in the first session, this painting I felt as if I could let go a bit more and see whether that gave me something else. This is all about learning. So the best way to learn something new is to do something different, I think, and to not allow yourself to be concerned about whether it's going to work or not. Again, trust always. Just keep going, keep working towards the end, because that's when surprises happen and often successes happen. Now you'll see that I've used a wide brush to kind of lay in the beginnings of colour, using acrylics of course, and the majority of these acrylics are Winsor & Newton acrylics, which are highly pigmented and highly recommended. They're a lovely paint to use. But just to be contrary, I'm also using the cheapest paint I have, which is Daler Rowney Simply brand, which is very runny and basically not great for if you want to have coverage. If you want to lay down a colour and see the colour, it's not great. But what it's great for is kind of mixing with other colours. And you can see I'm using this contamination technique where the brush always has a number of different colours on it. If you actually kind of look at the brush itself, it's got yellow, it's got green, it's got blue. When I was doing the trees, it has different kinds of reds and whites on it. And this is about allowing the brush to have a character build up. I'm not really cleaning the brush that often. Even here, as you see me doing some purple on the ground, you can see there's green available on that brush still. Now this again is a very well, I guess it's a non-recommended technique unless you're super ready for it, because it's about allowing yourself to be a bit messy. But I can press the brush down slightly harder and get more color out of it, and that's interesting and liberating and freeing. And it's not something that I think, oh my god, I haven't cleaned my brush and there's a bit of the wrong color on it. I'm not worried about there being the wrong color. I don't believe there is such a thing as the wrong color. I believe in the fate of the brush, I believe in its right to kind of make a mark, and it's all part of that crazy natural world I'm looking at with all those messy leaves all over the place. So I'm allowing the brush to have some kind of messiness to it and bring some of its own decisions, to the storyline. Again, you're not going to hear, you're not going to find this in an art book. This is not how you should normally paint. You should be cleaning your brushes after each use. But for me, cleaning your brushes is just putting off the inevitable, It's delaying. It's not allowing you to get on with it. I'd rather get on with it, because I think the flow of the way you paint is super important. It's like if I'm kind of famous for my analogies, but imagine if you were a rapper, or at least you were learning how to rap, singing really fast, and you you kept stopping every word and thinking, well, what would the next word be? And should it rhyme? And should it mean this or should it mean that? That's not the rapping then, is it? The whole point of the rapping is to go with the flow. It's to just keep going, and at some point it makes sense to you. It starts to kind of take a shape. But I imagine when you start rapping, it's just random words that don't rhyme and don't really make sense. But I bet you keep going. You keep the words flowing, because that's the point of that kind of art form, which is the continuation of the spoken word. In this case, the continuation of the brushy mark. Now we've entered into the oil paint stage now, and you can sort of see the difference, I think. You've got the sort of inherent wateriness of the acrylic, which is nice when you want it to feel translucent and sploshy, the light coming through it. Whereas the oil paint is going on really solid and reliable and sort of complete, as if when oil paint goes down, it believes it's the last coat. It has that sense of confidence to it, that it goes down saying, yep, that's all you need to do now, move on. Not that I often do leave it like that, I'll add to it. But you can't argue with the inherent confidence of oil paint itself. It dominates the acrylic. And you can see as the paint goes on, it feels like it's dominating. It's over painting. Suddenly you don't see the acrylic beneath it. So here we get to that point where the interesting marks that have been made by the acrylic, which is applied in such a kind of casual way at some points, you're able to kind of, as you're quickly applying the oil, say, yep, let's save this bit, let's expose that bit, let's cover this bit up. So that sense of how you can allow almost two paintings to exist in the same state, the acrylic under painting and the oil over painting. So these two surfaces have this sort of energy between them, and there's a bit of a flicker, I guess, between the two that gives the final piece an energy. I mean, I don't know whether it's worth anything. I don't know whether it's a worthy technique that I'll continue using forever. It's just something that when you try it, it's interesting, and it's like all things. There's a sort of experimental quality to it that wakes the mind up. Wakes up the sort of the creative energies, and you look at it and think, okay, that's doing a job, let's keep going. Of course, what does happen with the oil is sometimes it can look, especially the way I apply it, it can look a bit flat, as you're seeing now. I'm using slightly too much of the same color of oil, and that's where you get into contamination of oil as well. And if you look at the brush now, you'll see there's white within that kind of teal color. So I'm looking to get variation within oil as well. Now, I've been painting and drawing, sketching for many, many years now, but I've only been recording for 12 months or so. And I originally started because I thought it'd be fun just to have a YouTube channel. I thought it'd be interesting. But actually, it's a lot of hard work, putting these videos together. It takes me 5 hours to edit a video and 2 hours to do a painting. So most of the day is really editing, which seems crazy when I look back on it. But there's a positive I never knew I'd get, which is just watching back the process and understanding what I did. Now, it may be unusual to hear that when you're doing this kind of painting, you can't necessarily remember it afterwards. There's a sort of blur that happens. You're so into it, you're so part of it, that if somebody said, okay, fine, now if I turned again 90 degrees and somebody said, do another painting in exactly the same style, using exactly the same techniques, I'd struggle, because part of it is intuitive, a large part, and it's responsive, and it's your, creative energies kind of saying, why don't we try this? I don't know, that didn't work, let's try that. And just, it's sort of, there's an enthusiasm to it, a puppyishness to it, that means you just keep trying different things out kind of actively, live. And if the paint doesn't work out, you water it. And if the paint doesn't look the right color, you change it. And it's all very immediate and very fluid, and a bit kind of, it would look a bit chaotic, I imagine. It's not as controlled as you imagine. There's kind of artists you see on YouTube who have an oil palette, and they squeeze a little tiny dot of 20 different colors out as their first thing they do. It's like, whoa, this just looks like madness to me. The idea of saying, here are all these paints, and I shall use all of these paints in the same amount of each of them in order to create a painting. It feels so mechanical. For me, I want to be able to, maybe I'll only use one paint, or none of them, or all of them, or either way, it's a response. It's not something that's about setting up the palette with the warms on one side and the cools on the other side and all that kind of stuff with 12 kinds of yellow. I mean, who cares? Mix your yellow, mix anything, and mix it, if necessary, on the paper, on your panel, or even, heaven forbid, mix it within the brush, because it's just a painting, I mean, I would take more care painting my bedroom walls than I would painting this painting. Hell, that'll get me in trouble, that kind of quote. But what I mean by that is, if I was to paint a wall, I'm thinking about evenness, brush strokes, it looking neat, not splashing about. Whereas painting a bedroom wall is a job, is my point. Whereas this is not a job. This is a creative outlet. And my job at this moment is to let go, is to be within the painting, if possible, even within the trees. That sense of being part of something outside of yourself in a way that is such an exciting, revealing, but also, I don't know, you let yourself go a bit, and there's something a little bit tiring, a little bit emotionally exhausting, and almost frightening about it, because there's a bit of you that goes out there. It's like you're having some kind of existential moment, like meditation, where you feel yourself not quite where you were and you're just floaty off a bit. It has that quality to it, and that's exciting. Of course it is, because creativity is exciting, but it doesn't come without without nervousness. I'm not sure that's a proper word. My point about recording is it's really helpful for you yourself when you look back and see how the drawing, how the thing went. And I'm not talking about the conclusion, because obviously you have the painting afterwards. I'm talking about the stages of it, its development. Now, actually making a recording like this is a real palaver, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It involves a lot of camera gear and tripods and battery packs and dreadful. But we all have a phone, and I heavily recommend, in fact, come on, let's make it a requirement. Take photographs throughout anything you do. Take a photograph every 5 or 10 minutes, because that's where the gold is. The gold is in looking back through the story of how that piece came together. And in looking back at it, there is the learning. And it's great for everybody else too. I mean, if you have an Instagram feed and you want to put up one of your images, the thing that's going to excite people is the process. It's the how you got there that matters, less about what the final piece was. So there's the piece of advice to take from this painting, if nothing else. If you can't handle contaminated brushes, let's at least pass on the idea of photograph. In fact, you'll see throughout the paintings I've been doing often there'll be a little mobile phone will pop up, because that's me photographing the piece so I can look at it. I'm not doing it so I can remember it because I have the video, but I'm actually taking the photograph because I need to look at it. I need to look at the image other than the painting in front of me. So I need it miniaturized, put it on a glossy screen. It changes how it looks, and it enables me to see it differently. So even for different reasons, taking photographs of your piece as you're doing it is always a great idea. Now, the part of the painting I left till last were the trunks of the trees, other than the initial kind of, there's a red thing here that is the trunk. I always knew I was going to leave it till last because I always knew they were going to be the topic. That's really what the trees are. The trees are not the foliage. The trees are not the leaves. The trees are the trunks and the branches, at least to me. And I wanted them to have an identity, and I didn't know what kind of identity I was going to get. I knew that the actual trunks had this kind of flaky redness to them. And when I got to this stage, I realized I wanted to accentuate that. I wanted to boost that. And I really pushed this color massively, with the foreground tree having a lot of red because it's closest to me, and then becoming more kind of lilac as they go backwards into the woods. And it was the bit that excited me most about the whole painting. Really right at the end, deciding the intensity of these trunks and how the light was hitting them. And in the final painting, we've been looking at the final painting for the whole of this video, top left, and it's only, I hope anyway, it's only now you look and think, yeah, that's a very red tree, isn't it? What the hell, it looks like red straight out of the tube. And it is, because the rest of the painting can handle it. It's strong enough to allow that intensity of color. Is that the color of the tree? No. Is that how I feel about the color of the tree? Oh yeah. It's an emotional response. It's not a color reference, Final touches, some dappling light on the ground. Obviously the sun moves when you're painting out in the open air, and sometimes you get different moments that happen. You think, oh, the light there was nice, or in this case, the dappled light on the floor was nice, or the light on the trunk was nice. So actually you can kind of piece those nice bits together. You don't have to sort of, as it were, take a photograph and say, at this point, 3:30 on a Sunday afternoon, this is where the light is, and therefore that's what I shall paint. We are not machines, and therefore we can choose to kind of amalgamate, to add these different qualities together, because it makes for a more interesting picture. I think all pictures end up being like a sort of time lapse. They're never really still, or at least I don't think we would want them to be still like a photograph can be still. We want them to feel like they're in motion, and light's a great way of doing that, because that sense of the moving of the sun is inherently part of the moving of time, obviously. Now into the final stages of this painting now, what I affectionately call the dibby-dabby stage. It's those final little moments when the brush just needs to be there, and then here, and then there. And this is a very complex painting for me in terms of where the balance is, and I can tell you where the balance is wrong. It's on the left-hand tree, specifically the top of the left-hand tree. I almost felt like I needed to bring it back home and give it some more love. It never quite felt done. The trunks really help, and I'm happy with the distant trees, but that top left tree, it didn't pull forward enough. It wasn't the way I wanted it to feel. But it was a wonderful learning experience. I enjoyed it very much. Trees are fun. Trees, there's stuff to learn from them. So here's the final piece. It really forms a pair with the first one I did in the morning session, but ultimately they look quite different from each other, albeit literally turning 180 degrees, as I say. But this is my first real attempt at doing the complexity of trees rather than faking the structure of trees, showing the kind of messiness of the natural world, which is not, as I say, where my comfort zone is. But I learnt, and I hope you've enjoyed watching the learning. I hope there's been something for you in there too. Thank you so much if you listened all the way to the end. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.